Have you ever noticed how tired you are? Not just physically tired, but a deep, silent weariness that comes from constantly trying to steer your life, to insist, to fight against time, against expectations, and maybe most of all, against yourself. You pressure yourself to be more, to do more, stronger, more productive, more put together. You force routines that no longer feel right. You push to maintain relationships that feel heavy. You wrestle with decisions out of fear. And yet, the more you grip, the more it feels like everything essential, peace, clarity, joy, slips through your fingers like water, like sand, like life itself. This is where a principle comes in that can truly transform the way you live. An ancient concept from Taoism that the philosopher Alan Watts so beautifully translated for the Western world as acting without forcing. It's called Wu Wei. But don't be mistaken. This has nothing to do with weakness or giving up. In fact, Wu Wei is one of the deepest expressions of wisdom. It is the art of moving with life, not against it. Think of a master surfer. They don't try to dominate the ocean. They learn to feel its rhythm and flow with the wave. Or a dancer who doesn't fight the music, but becomes an expression of it. This is the shift we are talking about. It's a move away from being the exhausted rower, fighting against the current, to becoming the wise sailor who adjusts the sails and lets the wind guide them. So, I invite you to breathe, let your shoulders drop, be present for a few minutes, because this journey from forcing to flowing is the beginning of finding the peace you've been fighting so hard for. Let's be honest about this fight. It's that low hum of anxiety that follows you to bed and is there to greet you when you wake up. It's the endless mental to-do list that's less about getting things done and more about trying to manage every possible future outcome. It's the tension in your shoulders, the shallow breaths, the feeling that you are holding a defensive line against the overwhelming force of life itself. We have a blueprint in our minds for our career, our relationships, our growth. And every time reality takes a different path, we double down. We push harder, trying to wrestle life back into submission. But this is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes, leaving you with nothing but aching, empty hands. This constant state of forcing creates a painful disconnection. You are so busy managing your existence that you forget to live it. You're so focused on the next thing that you miss the wisdom of this moment. We've been trained to believe this control is strength, but it's really a symptom of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of not being enough. So we build walls of routine and rigid identities, clinging to them for a sense of safety. But life is not a fortress to be defended. It is a river, and its nature is to flow. When you try to dam it up, you aren't stopping the river. You are only ensuring that when the pressure finally breaks, the flood will be that much more devastating. The paradox is that in your desperate attempt to control everything, you lose the one thing you can actually cultivate, your own inner peace. To understand this shift, we need to go beyond just words and feel the essence of Taoist philosophy, particularly the concept of Wu Wei. It is often translated as non-doing, but this can be misleading. It doesn't mean sitting on the sidelines of your life. Instead, Wu Wei is better understood as effortless action, or, as Alan Watts put it, the principle of not forcing. It's the art of getting out of your own way. It is the grace of a master craftsman who appears to create with no effort, whose work seems to flow naturally. It is cutting wood with the grain, not against it. Life has a grain, a current, a natural intelligence. The friction and suffering we feel so often come from trying to go against that grain. This brings us to what Watts called the law of reversed effort, or the backwards law. The more you desperately try to fall asleep, the more awake you become. The more you aggressively pursue happiness, the more it seems to elude you. The more you try to force someone to love you, the more they pull away. This is because the very act of forceful trying creates its own resistance. True growth doesn't come from this kind of anxious self-improvement. It comes from a place of acceptance. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself and allow things to be as they are, authentic change can finally begin. Wu Wei invites you to ask a different question. Instead of how can I make this happen, you start to ask what is trying to happen here and how can I align with it? This shift in perspective is the beginning of the end of your unwinnable war. It's the moment you stop rowing and start sailing. If the idea of letting go feels too abstract, it's because we've been conditioned to do rather than be. The solution isn't another harsh set of rules. It is a gentle, consistent practice of shifting your awareness. First, practice observing without immediate reaction. When you feel that familiar urge to control, to fix, to manage an outcome, just pause. Take one deep breath. Notice the anxiety in your chest, the cascade of worried thoughts. Don't judge them or act on them instantly. This small space you create between a feeling and your reaction is where your freedom is born. You start to realize you are not your anxiety. You are the awareness behind it. Second, bring your focus back to what you can truly influence. You cannot control traffic, the economy, or what others think of you, but you can choose your response. You can choose your attitude. You can choose where to place your attention. When you find your mind spinning out over the unmanageable, gently guide it back to your own inner world. You can't control the storm, but you can learn to steady your own ship. Third, look to nature as your teacher. A wise old tree doesn't stand rigid in a storm. If it did, it would snap. It bends, it sways. It finds strength in its flexibility. A flower doesn't force itself to bloom. It blooms when the conditions are right. Your resilience comes not from resisting life's storms, but from learning to bend without breaking, trusting that your roots are deep enough to hold you. Finally, begin to loosen your grip on rigid identities. So much of our forcing comes from a need to defend a story of who we think we should be. But you are not your job title, your relationship status, or your list of accomplishments. These are temporary roles. When you let go of the character you're trying to play, you create space for who you truly are to emerge. This isn't about giving up. It's about giving in to a wiser intelligence that flows through everything. So what does life actually look like on the other side of this struggle? It is crucial to understand that your life doesn't suddenly become perfect. Storms will still come. The difference is you. The frantic, anxious energy of resistance is replaced by a quiet, steady current of peace. You begin to notice a sense of spaciousness. Without the constant mental weight of trying to manage the future, your mind becomes clearer. Your intuition, long drowned out by the noise of anxious planning, begins to whisper again, and you learn to hear it. Solutions to problems appear not because you hunted them down, but because you created the quiet space for them to emerge. Your relationships also change profoundly. When you stop trying to control people or force a relationship to fit an ideal, you give them the freedom to be themselves. This allows for a genuine connection, free from the heavy weight of expectation. You learn to appreciate people for who they are, not who you need them to be. You develop a new relationship with challenges. Instead of meeting them with frustration, you meet them with a curious adaptability. You see them less as personal failures and more as the river of life simply turning a corner. Life begins to feel less like a race to be won and more like a dance to be joined. There is a sense of alignment, of being in the right place at the right time. You realize that you are not a separate soldier fighting the universe, but an inseparable part of it, dancing with it. This journey from forcing to flowing unfolds one small moment of release at a time. I would love to hear from you. What part of this resonated with you the most? Is there one thing in your life right now that you feel you are trying to force? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to read to begin their own journey of letting go. We started with this image of an exhausted person, worn out from fighting a constant battle. But the ultimate revelation is that there was never a war to begin with. The struggle was an illusion created by the belief that you were separate from the very flow you were fighting. Letting go is not defeat, it is the ultimate act of wisdom. It is the courage to release your white-knuckled grip on how you believe things should be and to open your hands to receive life as it is. It is trading the exhausting job of the rower for the graceful art of the sailor. It is realizing your true power was never in the force of your effort, but in your ability to read the wind, feel the current, and join the magnificent, unpredictable, and beautiful dance of life.